Hi everyone and welcome to this interview. I'm your host, Sunny Gigi, and it's my pleasure to introduce today's guest. Today we have Alex. He was born and raised in a traditional household, but after discovering Rabbi Reuven's Musar series and Gehenom movie, Alex decides to dive deeper into the truth and purity of the Torah. We're very excited to have him here with us today to share his journey and experience. So without further ado, let's get into it. Okay, so today we have Alex with us. Alex, thank you very much for joining us here today on the show. Can you please tell us a little more about yourself and how was it like for you growing up? What was your upbringing, your background, your history? What was it like before did Teshuva? Just a little bit more about yourself.
Sure, it's my pleasure joining you. Thank you for giving me the opportunity. I was born in the former Soviet Union in Uzbekistan, Tashkent. My family immigrated to the United States in the 90s. And then from there, we moved to New York. So me and my sister grew up over there. We went to public school, just we had regular life. And a few years afterwards, we moved to Phoenix, Arizona. We had better opportunity here. So my parents decided to move out here. And I finished high school here, college. My family background was very traditional. We, observed the holidays, and we kind of knew our Jewish identity, but we never were practicing, halacha and stuff like that. But we kept traditional observance of holidays, and basically that's it. But my family did everything to, my father and my mother provided everything for us. We were never lacking with anything.
How old are you?
I'm 35.
35. Wow. I thought you were 19 or 20.
Yeah, I look young.
Oh, Baruch Hashem. Good for you. You have good genetics. Okay, so you guys came here from the USSR, right?
Mm-hmm.
You came here when you were 4 years old?
Yeah.
You went to public school. And your parents, were they observant in any way besides the traditional? Were their grandparents observant that you know of, or?
No. I know from my grandparents, their grandparents were religious. I saw some photos of them. We have some old photos, and they were dressed very, how would you say, traditional.
Orthodox?
Yeah, exactly. And they were telling me stories, my grandparents told me stories of their grandparents. That was even before the Soviet era, and how they were living back then. And then when I think it was in 1924 when everything changed, there was then they started losing their Jewish identity or their observance. And then my grandparents were telling me stories of how they grew up before the Bolsheviks came, and they were forced to go to the public schools over there, and they would teach them about secular studies and stuff like that.
Yeah,
and that's how over time my grandparents they became more secular, and then my parents, but they always knew they were Jewish. And also it was interesting in the Soviet times, what they did is every nationality they had in their passports, they had their nationality. So if you were Jew, they would put a Jew in your passport. So even if you wanted to hide it, you couldn't do that.
Yeah.
Even people who were not observant or were very secular or very anti-Jewish, they would still have their on their passport that they were Jewish. So that's how kind of my parents were brought up, and and then when we left, there and we immigrated to the U.S., we really didn't know too much. I mean, but we had the basic knowledge, but not as far as observing according to Halakha.
Let me ask you, do you know how I believe you said your grandparents, how they kind of went off the derech a little bit? Do you know how, or I know it's...
Well, I don't know exactly, but I remember my grandparents were telling me that in the early, in the early 1920s, they would force like kids. They would take the kids and they would put them into like public schools, and they would teach them about you know the mostly what the state wanted them to know, like about communism, and I think it started even actually before my grandparents. So it was like my great grandparents.
And do you know if they still do that today?
Oh no, no.
What do they teach them today versus your grandparents' time?
Well, my grandparents' time was, I think it was like during the Stalin era, and they were more like focused on communism and building the country and patriotism and a lot of secular studies and atheism and propaganda about, building the nation and fighting for the nation. And my grandparents grew up during the World War II, and they were very influenced in the Stalin, the way they portrayed the Soviet Union, and they were like very patriotic, and then also they were scared also because of anti-Semitism was very strong in back then.
Oh, yeah. Unfortunately, anti-Semitism has always been around. It's probably not going to go away. Let me ask you this, Alex. What do you do?
Previously, I worked in a company called Vanguard. It's an investment firm. It's like a brokerage company, and I used to transfer assets from different financial companies into Vanguard. So that was my responsibility.
That sounds like a pretty big responsibility.
Yeah.
And you were doing this in Arizona?
Yes, it was during COVID. I worked there for a few years.
So you're into stocks and those kind of things also?
Not necessarily, but it was a good opportunity for me to get into that field. So I graduated in business school, Arizona State University. So that's why I wanted to get into that field a little.
Are there a lot of Russians in Arizona?
I think there's maybe like 20,000 people. Yeah.
Is that a lot?
Yes. I think it is.
Okay, so you guys came here. You're in Arizona now. You were raised secular. What happened? How did you, let me ask you this. How did you discover Rabbi Reuven or the organization? How did you start getting stronger in Judaism? What made the change? What happened?
Well, it's a long process. Even before I met Rabbi Reuven, and well, in high school, I was interested in history, and I remember in class we would discuss like different topics, and I think it was one of my teachers who was talking about ancient history and talking about the Jewish religion, and I was interested in that. And then I was like reading books about it, and I just was curious. And then after high school, I went to college, and I kind of forgot about it, my interest. But then after that, I think it was during high school. During college, I had an opportunity to go to Israel for birthright, and when I visited Israel, that kind of ignited my curiosity again, about Judaism and stuff like that. But it was like more like an identity, not like religiously, like a Jewish identity and stuff like that. About 9 years ago, my grandma passed away, and she lived in Israel, and we would see each other from time to time. But after she passed away, I started thinking, about life in general, and I was more curious, to learning more about my past and stuff like that. So I started asking my parents, about our family history, and that's how kind of like I grew into that more and more out of curiosity. I started listening to first, I believe it was Rabbi Yosef Mizrachi, and through his lectures, I started like finding out about Judaism and the halachic aspect of everything. I met Rabbi Reuven, I believe it was also on YouTube, when Rabbi Yosef Mizrachi and him did a lecture together. This is when I first saw Rabbi Reuven, and I was inspired by his story about how he returned. So it was kind of similar to mine. he he was also immigrant to the United States and lived in a secular lifestyle. And then I think the stories that he told about HaShem took it back his millions, it kind of resonated with me, and I started like listening to him more. So I remember one time, I think it was 6 years ago, he came to Phoenix, our community here.
Yeah.
Invited him here, and then I met him for the first time, and he told his personal story with more detail, and I just kind of was interested in more, and I just kept in contact with him ever since, and I started listening to his lectures more. So that's kind of the background of that.
He actually started giving you like personal help, like one-on-one time.
I met him in person when he was here, and I emailed him, with a few questions I had. He would answer me, and that's how I kind of kept in contact with him. But it was like on rare occasion I would ask him questions, but most of the time I would listen to his lectures, and he does a good job in answering questions during the lecture. And most of the questions I had was he already answered them for me, So I never did one-on-one sessions or talk to him one-on-one. I would email him from time to time if I had difficult questions, but most of the time when I listened to his lectures, he would answer my questions. If it came up like that.
It's very interesting because you're not the first person that's said that. So that's kind of interesting to see how everyone is kind of experiencing the same things. Like they have a question, but the next lecture he answers, or he gives them the information that they need to understand.
That's what happened to me. It was nice.
So when you were going to school, when you were traditional and you were still secular, before you met Rabbi Reuven, did anything else happen? Like what process did you start doing like Teshuva or changing your lifestyle and getting away from the secular?
Well, when I started listening to his lectures, he would constantly remind how important it is to keep Shabbat, about ethics and morality to improve the character traits. And I kind of slowly resonated with that, and I started changing. I had a friend here that kind of helped me too. I would visit the local synagogue here, and we would do like study sessions after prayers, and that kind of helped me a lot too, because I had somebody personal that I can see every day and talk to them. And I would still continue listening to lectures, even though sometimes I missed a week or two or something like that, but I would still continue because every time he would come up with new material. And then I think I remember the Pirkei Avot series that he did a few years back. That was kind of the tipping point, I guess.
Well, what happened? What was the tipping point?
Well, the Pirkei Avot series was very interesting in the way it he presented like morality or ethics and how to behave and how to be a good Jew, or not necessarily a good Jew, but like the way to act in society. And I really liked it, and I would listen to that. And then like going further down the line, I would he has a a movie that he did with Ganon. I listened to that, and that kind of pushed me forward. So every time I would listen to like new lectures, or he would come up with a new like movie or series that made me wanting to go more and more into changing myself, changing my character trait, and then like just speaking out the truth, about Shabbat, about conducting oneself in the proper way. So that kind of helped me a lot in life.
So have you spoken or have been in contact with different rabbis?
Yes. So I have a local rabbi here. I started going to shul not right away. It took me some time. But beforehand, I would listen to Rabbi Mizrachi and Rabbi Reuven together. So I kind of like interchanged lectures. Like every week I would listen to both of them. And that kind of.
So what do you think the difference is between other rabbis versus what Rabbi Mizrachi and Rabbi Reuven?
The differences, I would say that they're more straightforward, and they tell you how it is. I know some rabbis like beforehand. I remember like I think it was during my college years. I would see rabbis too. Like they would like just teach you like the basic things, like something very easy or something soft, nothing like nothing too difficult. They have a soft approach, and they just want you to come and just learn a little bit, and that's it. They never like were involved in or didn't want. They were not encouraging you to change. You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
when I started listening to Rabbi Reuven and Rabbi Mizrachi, during their lectures, they would just put in like statements, like about Shomer Shabbat, how important it is, and they would say like things about Shabbat. If you don't observe Shabbat, there's consequences, or if you don't do this, there's consequences, and that kind of keeps a person like not at the edge, but I'm saying like they would start like thinking about the consequences. They would think about their actions, and that kind of motivated me to change instead of like the self approach that I've witnessed before. About just learning a little bit about the partial, or a little bit about the Jewish holidays. That's like basic things. But when I started listening to Rabbi Reuven or Rabbi Mizrachi, they would push you to go forward. You know what I mean? And they would motivate you to change. And I see it in my life when I started changing. And even though it was hard for me, because I'm the only one kind of in my family that is observant, even now, I know it's worth it, because I know the difference between the previous life and this one that I'm currently pursuing.
So basically, you're a perfect example of fulfilling one of the prophecies in the end of days. And one of the prophecies is that the children will do tshuva, and in some cases make the parents do tshuva instead of the other way around. Usually the parents have to teach the child how to grow and how to behave and how to follow the ways of the Torah. But, it's obviously very clear that it's not really like that now. Usually you see parents are divorced, you see people aren't really keeping it so much, or they're keeping it half, or they keep whatever they want. But basically what you're telling me is that Rabbi Reuven and Rabbi Mizrachi, they kind of taught you the fear aspect of it, and it's not just love.
Exactly. Yes, that's what I want to get into. Yeah.
So you didn't ever experience the fear aspect of the Torah before you listened to Rabbi Reuven and Rabbi Mizrachi?
That's correct. Yes, and then after what they were saying, I was interested in finding out like the sources. They would always provide sources, so I would just go and see myself, and I'll say, yeah, I was like surprised. Yeah, that's true. It says it in the Gemara. It says it in Musar, and it was very interesting for me too. That was kind of an eye-opening, experience.
Why do you think other rabbis, or some rabbis, I should say, don't really talk about that kind of stuff?
It's hard to say. Every rabbi is different and their approach is different, but in general, I think it's because they want people to feel comfortable and comfortable with Judaism, or they want to start with the soft approach. But sometimes it doesn't work for everybody, and even if somebody changes, it works to a certain point, because it comes tests in life that you need that fear aspect, because if you don't have it, you won't be able to pass these tests that I've also experienced myself, and without knowing these consequences of my actions, I would not pass tests that I've did in the as a result.
Yeah, exactly. It's no different than the reason why you don't run a red light or speed on on the highway or anywhere because you're afraid you're going to get a ticket. And once you get pulled over, you can't tell the cop, oh, listen, I love you, so let me go. No, you don't have to give me a ticket. It's those kind of things aren't really going to work when you get upstairs. So they definitely teach the truth, and there's definitely sources for everything they say. That's exactly how the Torah wants us to learn it. So let me ask you this. Was there any challenges or any hard challenges that you had to overcome during your process of doing Teshuva?
Well, yes, like everybody else, there's challenges. I think the hardest part was keeping Shabbat. I started off by myself, like because my parents they work on Shabbat and stuff like that. And they go to work, and I was by myself most of the time on Shabbat. On Saturdays, like on Fridays, we usually had the traditional Friday or night meal and stuff. But on Saturdays, I was left alone. And in the beginning, it was good because I had time to read. I was kind of left alone, and I spent Shabbat myself. It was nice in the beginning, but it was challenging because I didn't have the support I needed. And then also, like when you have the appliances for Shabbat and stuff like that, it was hard. But then eventually, I started learning the laws of Shabbat, and I started applying my knowledge, and then I bought special appliances for myself. And then also, kashrut was one of the issues that I had. I wanted to make sure, the household was kosher and stuff like that. It was kind of hard to convince my parents, but eventually they kind of gave in. It was challenging in the beginning, but it was good, Baruch HaShem.
Dealing with those kind of things, especially family and parents, when you're trying to, do one thing and they're trying to do another thing, and especially if you were living at their house.
And then also, I want to tell you, like, there's they try to talk me out of it many times. And for me, I'm kind of difficult because of it's like a person has to have certain personality trait, And one of the things that Rabbi Reuven, kind of gave me encouragement is to stand up for myself in the aspect of like doing the right thing or learning Torah or observing the laws. And he gave me a lot of like resources and knowledge to kind of not debate, but like answer back to people who would try to like pull you away from observing.
How did you manage that? They tried to take you or turn you off. Whatever you were doing wasn't making much sense to them. How did you overcome that little obstacle there? How did you manage to push through?
I would just persist, and they see that, my parents saw that it made me more happier, and gave me more purpose. So they kind of made amends.
Do you feel like you may have had an influence on them to change them or help them in any way?
A little bit, I guess. Yeah, there is something a little bit, but not to the extent that I want them to. But I think it's important to have some like constantly listening to Torah in order for it to change. But they don't have that, so that's kind of the issue here. You know what I mean? Even while they see me, doing my thing and learning and observing in the household, but I think they need some sort of a rabbi to kind of push them in the right direction, I guess. Even though I try, but I've over the years I understood not to do that because it could create conflict. So I in the beginning I did that, but now I think it's not a good idea. It's better for some other person to kind of bring them back.
Dealing with families, like I said, is very difficult, especially, their little child, trying to tell them what to do. It usually doesn't, it's very rare that it has any type of influence on them. Let me ask you this, Alex. What are some of the goals that you have?
My goals?
I think you're learning more. You want to learn more.
I do want to learn more. I dedicate, an hour a day to learn, not by lectures, but like books and stuff like that. I want to increase that. That's important for me. Continuing listening to lectures to get inspired and stuff like that. That's important, I guess. Um, one of the things that I think is important is to start a family, to get married. Um, so that's one of the aspects I'm trying to go towards. Yeah. So I want to build a family, and one of the things that I've found hard is to find somebody that is like-minded, person that kind of shares the same ideology or same goals in life. That's one of the things I find hard to find in a shidduch.
So you've been actively looking for somebody,
Yes.
and you go on shidduchim and you meet them. What's different between your ideology and theirs generally?
Generally, it's the I'm gonna say it right, but it's like shkafa, the way they look at things in general. It's kind of hard because I want somebody that has similar goals and similar like how to raise a family. And one of the things that I really like, this is the new series that Rabbi Reuven has about Jewish intimacy, and it's very interesting. It not only talks about it talks about like building a family and how important it is. So I think that helped to put in perspective how to build a family.
Alex, if there was any type of advice that you would give to somebody and that's in the process of doing tshuva, what kind of advice would you give?
Starting off the journey, the tshuva journey.
Yeah.
It depends how a person really wants it. So I think the best thing to do is to be committed. Don't a person like sometimes it gets hard and a person wants to quit. It's very important to be consistent. I remember in my previous job, I was working in the call center, and I remember we had to memorize a script, and every single day for like 8 hours a day, I would say the script, and it was like repeating every day the same like the same format. And I've noticed, the more you do something, the easier it gets, especially with like repetition, and
Yeah.
that kind of helped me to in my life will continue to do it, to repeat this, not the same thing, but like just get into a habit of praying or learning or doing certain rituals, and that will help. A person who hasn't grown up in like a religious household, or was never like in a religious environment, or was never educated in a yeshiva, it's harder for them because they're older, and they don't have that habit of doing these things. So I think it's important to always like move forward, and like if you fail, try again. It's going to be easier over time. One other advice I want to give somebody when they want to start off and they want more inspiration, Rabbi Reuven said something very interesting that I want to share, is that learning biographies of tzaddikim. I have an example for that I want to give. I think it was 6 or 7 years ago, I was given a book of Rabbi Yosef, his biography. And I think it was during Shabbat, I started reading it, and that gave me a lot of inspiration, learning about his life and his accomplishments and what he had to deal with. And not only Rabbi Ovadia, like in Rabbi Reuven's lectures, he would give stories of tzaddikim, or if it was Chafetz Chaim, or Rabbi Elchanan Wasserman, other tzaddikim, they it gives a lot of inspiration. So I think it's a good idea to do that, try to follow in their footsteps and see how they went through challenges and then apply it to one's life.
Yeah, a lot of those stories are quite incredible, actually. Have you thought about going to learn in like yeshiva or anything like that, or that's?
I wanted to, and I just don't have the opportunity. I don't know where to go, especially my age and my situation. So I don't know.
Usually we have different kinds of people that come and tell their experience and their story. I'm sure there's a lot of people that'll be able to relate to yours, and it'll definitely help people and change people and help people return to Hashem. I wanted to thank you very much for taking the time coming on here and sharing your story with other people and helping them get stronger in new tshuva.
I want to thank you also for your time. I appreciate that, for giving me the opportunity to share my story.
Baruch Hashem. Thank you. So you have my contact, you have our information. If there's anything you need, reach out to us. And B'ezrat Hashem, we'll get some very good positive feedback from this podcast.
God willing.
All right, Alex. So we'll be in touch. Have a good evening, and we'll be in touch.
Have a good evening.
You too. All right. Thanks for that. A very special thank you to all our amazing guests who show real Ahavat Yisrael by taking the time out of their busy schedules and sharing their ups and downs with us, all for the sake of Am Yisrael. May Hashem continue to bless you 1,000-fold. If you enjoyed this video, you can find more of these podcasts on our website at www.b'ezrathashem.org. If you're on YouTube, be sure to subscribe to the channel to hear more highly influencing lectures and stories like the one you heard here today. Thank you for watching, and B'ezrat Hashem, may we all have the merit to return to Hashem.